But anyway, let's start off by introducing ourselves. I'm Clay Gilbert. I've been a member of the horror track staff since before it was the horror track staff. It used to be the Dark Fans.
I'm Corvus Nocturnum. I also write under ERIO lots at this moment. So, with no further ado.
I'm Michelle Belanger. Most people who recognize me visually have probably seen me either on Paranormal State or on pretty much every vampire documentary the History Channel airs. Okay. And I will try not to be like horribly blue and inappropriate. But no guarantees.
It's 10 o'clock.
Yeah, it's 10 o'clock, no guarantees. And we're talking about Anne Rice, so read it.
Exactly. Why don't we talk a little bit about, first of all, how we got introduced to Anne Rice, our perspectives on Anne's fiction. For me, it was, like I said before, Interview with a Vampire. I've read pretty much everything that Anne's written. I definitely am a fan of the vampire stuff first and foremost. Not so much Mayfair Witches stuff. I loved Servant of the Bones, and I wish she'd written more of those. But I'm glad to see that Lestat's coming back. That's all I'll say about that.
I'd have to say that although I've always been, big into fiction reading, there was a period in my life where I was just drifting from one job to another, and I kind of lost touch with that creative side of myself until I worked at the movie theater. And I happened to be going through the aisles, and Interview with the Vampire was playing in Boulder, Colorado, where I was living, and that re-sparked my interest in the vampire and in fiction in general. That later spurred me.
I have had a passion for the vampire and fiction folklore, in fact, since elementary school, really early elementary school. I'm not quite sure what sparked it to begin with. I can tell you vividly my first introduction to Anne Rice. I was a Chelsea Quinn Yarbrough fan, still am, and count myself a friend as well. So I'd read the Saint Germain series and had chewed through pretty much everything that was out and was looking for something else to read. And I picked up Interview with the Vampire. And while it no longer shows, I was a very, very sheltered, raised Catholic girl. And so I was reading Interview, and there's points where I'm like, oh, my stars and garters, I think I need to go to confession. I think this is gay erotica.
I too started off with Quinn's books. Certainly count myself a fan and a friend of Quinn as well. And other than Saint Germain, Lestat and Louis were the first two really human vampires that I came in contact with. And I'm one of those people that I like my vampires to be vampires. I like my vampires to drink blood and to have difficulties with sunlight. But I like complicated monsters.
Difficulties above and beyond sparkling.
Exactly. Exactly. We're going to point that out. No, we're going to leave the sparkling, but Michelle had to do it.
Yeah, sorry. No offense to anybody, but just doesn't bad taste in my mouth. Yeah, and now we're done.
I like my monsters complicated though, and I like a little touch of the human in my immortal, and that's what Quinn brings to her stuff, and Anne brings to her stuff as well. So I welcomed Interview with the Vampire when I first.
I regret I haven't had the pleasure of reading a lot of Chelsea's work.
Absolutely.
You should.
I've done a cursory, research on her and the general gist of her work in order to write about it academically. But before Anne Rice, the only exposure I had to vampires really was Stoker's, and it touched a chord in me so much that when I was around 10 years old, 2 years later after reading it, I had to give an oral book report, and I was being lazy at the time. I wasn't ambitious back then, and I had to stand up and give a speech. And I picked Stoker's Dracula, and I winged the whole thing out of memory, got an A on it, and then I admitted 2 years later to the lit teacher that I bullshitted my way through it, and he said, well, you did a fine job.
So did Stoker. I love the book, but so did Stoker.
I think he bullshitted his way through it too.
It's not a book that would hold up in the publishing industry currently.
No, the whole epistolary thing has kind of gone
but
the way.
certainly the things that the archetypes he hit on, I think, are bigger than any of the failings of his prose.
Right.
But I think if we have to be honest about it, Stoker had a huge impact on vampires, but Chelsea and Anne Rice were far more prominent in our lifetime. But we kind of owe that type of archetype to Lord Byron more than anything.